So I think we pulled a fast one on you if you were looking at that bulletin. We added an extra miracle to that. And so we always have the green light. Never to take anything away from the lectionary, but you can always add to it. And so those of you who know the Gospel of Luke, you probably have discovered that it's usually the three of those parables that get spoken about together because they're called the lost and found parables. And you know, I used this once in a management training that I did whenever I was in the business world. You know, because I would never give the advice that's given in those parables to people in business, generally, you know? And so think about it for one moment. Whenever you look at that first parable, it's kind of like you have 100 sheep, one gets lost. Do you leave the 99 for the one? That's probably not a good management principle, is it? You know, so the 1%, you know, I would never teach people to go after 1% in business, you see? And then whenever you look at that woman with the coins, you know, so she had, you know, in the story in some of the translations, she had 10 drachmas, okay? And a drachma would be worth approximately half a day's labor wage. So that's about it. So the loss was not that big of a deal, but you could say it was 10%. Sure, in business, I would actually suggest for people to go after 1 out of 10%, you know, the 10% too. But then you get that third one, and that third one is 50%, right? You know, so he only has 2 sons, right? So then the father goes. But you see, here's the kind of God we have. We have a God that isn't business oriented. You know, we have a God who doesn't necessarily follow the laws of business because, see, that shepherd, that woman, that father, that all represents who God is. See, our God would go after the 1%. See, that's kind of interesting. So what I want to talk to you today about is how to receive extravagant love. Because that's the kind of love that's displayed in those parables. Extravagant love. Not just love, okay? Not just love. Love's good enough, but this is extravagant love. And so by extravagant, I looked up that word, and what it means is, it means to spend more than is necessary on. So in other words, to spend more money than it's worth, you know? So I went to lunch with a friend of mine one time who has a lot of money, and so the meal cost $20 and his tip is $50. See, that would be extravagant, right? Or to give more of your time than is required, or to give more of your energy than is required. That's called extravagant love. Now, that's the kind of love our Father has for us. See, always that kind of love that will go over and beyond. The love of God will always exceed what we possibly can imagine it to be. Always will exceed that if we're open to receiving that. See, the problem I think that a lot of us have is simply this. That's hard to receive, isn't it? See, in a sense that how can we have extravagant love? Look at our world. Just look at our own selves, you know, those kind of things, so we don't see it too much. So what I want to do is spend a little time trying to convince you that extravagant love is possible. Ken and I had some time away a couple weeks ago, so we were in Clearwater. So we returned from the beach, and we were at the pool where we have a place, and so there was a lady and her husband who came up, who was the next day at the pool with us, and we talked about the day before. What she said was that they went to the beach, Clearwater Beach, around 6:30, 7 o'clock. It was nearing to where the sun was going to set pretty soon. So, because her husband can't take the direct sun, so they have to go later to the beach. And so what she said she noticed that most people were clearing out from the beach. Have you ever been to the beach whenever it's starting to get sunset? You know, there's no one on the beach anymore. But what she noticed was there were 2 adults, you know, like in a party down, you know, about 500 feet away, 2 little children. And then just a little bit right to them was a older lady who was a little heavy set, the lady described her, who was laying flat on a towel in the sand. Now, on top of her was about a 16-year-old girl who, was laying right in the small of what was presumed to be her mother's back, using her mother as a pillow, and her leg was kind of like drawn up a bit like this, and her head was looking right at this couple that I was talking to about the story. And this lady was saying that as she was watching that, she kept thinking, why is that girl on her mother's back like that, using it like a pillow? And then she also noticed that the mother had to kind of like shake her legs a few times just to kind of like, let the blood flow, because I guess that pressure was stopping that flow. And the lady said she just couldn't believe the selfishness of that girl on her mother's back. And so she and her husband left and they went walking somewhere, and then they came back to the beach area, but where the showers were, and saw this whole group of people that were on the beach now cleaning up. And so what she noticed was the lady who was kind of being laid on. She was there, and this lady greeted her, and the lady greeted her back. And then she saw like the two older guys and then the two children, and they were kind of like looking at her with mistrust. And then she noticed between them was a wheelchair with a 16-year-old girl on it, whose leg was up like that, and her head was twisted that way. And so they discovered that's what they were observing. So what that was a statue of extravagant love, you see. So what was happening was freeing this little girl from her prison of a wheelchair to be on the beach for 30 minutes. Extravagant love. Now see, it exists, doesn't it? But you might end up saying, but of course it does between a mother and her daughter. I mean, isn't that the most natural thing? But could it exist between adult and adult? Well, how many of you have ever read O. Henry's book, The Gift of the Magi? Have you ever read that book? Now, you remember what that's about? So I think the characters are Della and Jim. So they're both poor, but they're in love with each other. And Della has this long, her gift, her treasure is her long hair. It's just beautifully long hair. And that's what she has, and that makes her feel wealthy. And Jim, the only thing he has is a pocket watch made of gold that his father gave him years ago. Now, it's Christmas time, and they both want to buy each other a Christmas gift, but they have a total of $1.59 together. So what Della does is she goes secretly and she sells her hair for 20 bucks. And so she gets enough to buy a watch fob made out of platinum for Jim. And so she brings it home, and then Jim comes home later that night and sees his wonderful Della bald, and he can't believe it. And he looks at her and says, "My Della, I just brought you this incredible tortoiseshell set of combs, and they're even placed with precious stones so that they will go smoothly through your hair." And she gave him her gift. Now, isn't that perfect love? Isn't that extravagant giving? So they gave everything they had of value to make each other happy. So it can be done between two, but you might say sarcastically, or in real life, you might say, well, they loved each other really a lot early on. Give them a few years, right? So, can we have it between just adult and others that don't have that much meaning to them? Well, some of you attended an event we had here Friday night, this past Friday, and it was a sing-along, in our social hall with some incredible musicians from the 60s and 70s. And so those of us who were that age, we were kind of like hootenannying around there and having some fun. And Katie, our receptionist, she had a neighbor who she and Howard brought to our event. And this man, the neighbor, he knew that wine was going to be served here, and he knew that it was one free one that everyone got. So what he decided was to bring a bottle of wine so that he wouldn't continue to drink St. Brendan's wine. That's what he was thinking. And then he happened to ask Katie on the way in, and he said, "Do you think that's going to be okay for me to do?" And she said, "Well, I'm not sure, So she talked a little bit to him about that. And so you know what he did? he took the bottle that he brought in and went to Dan, I think it was, and told Dan he would like to pay for this bottle to be served it. So the guy paid for the bottle twice. I think that's extravagant love, don't you? Now, you know what else we found out too about that was this was the same gentleman who 3 or 4 weeks ago came to St. Brendan's, and he looked around the church and he said, do you know, your gutters are clogged. In fact, you have some trees growing in them. And Katie said, well, that's a vestry decision. They'll have to take care of that, you know. And the guy says, well, do you know that we have, you know, I have a friend who has a service that takes care of that. And Katie said, that will be a couple months till the vestry gets through that. He said, would it be possible for me to have my friend come in and do an assessment about how much that would cost? And Katie said, I guess that would be all right. And he said, and then I'll make out a check to St. Brendan's for that amount. Extravagant love. Okay? You see, extravagant love is that kind of love where you don't have to do it. In fact, it's a little bit more than what you have to offer. And you don't even have to offer that, you see. And that's why we celebrate Ministry Fair. Because, see, that's what that is. It gives us an opportunity to give out extravagant love to people. Now, we have this ministry fair for 2 reasons. Okay, here's the first reason. We want to inform people, especially our newcomers, you know, what we have going on at the church. Because guess what? We'd like you to join whatever you can. So that's one reason. The second reason is it gives us an opportunity to share with people God's extravagant love. See, that's why we do it. Now, whenever you think about the extravagant love that comes in ministering, it comes from the definition of what ministry is. See, the reason why we have ministry is this. We need to, here's the definition of it, to let people know God loves them in ways that they wouldn't even thought possible. That's why we minister. That's why we have church. That's why we have ESL program. That's why we have the cuddling ministry. That's why we knit, you know, because we knit lap cloths for people that are suffering from cancer and the people in nursing homes. We do this to remind people that God's love for them is more than they ever imagined. And the world teaches a lot of people that they don't matter. See, what we do is we get a chance to let people know they matter. Because we follow a God that doesn't necessarily follow a business plan that we're used to. Our God follows a business plan that is based on extravagant love. So my brothers and sisters, that's why we're here today. We're here today so that we can appreciate for our own selves God's extravagant love for us. Maybe capture a glimpse of that from time to time, and then have we can give that or let it work through us to others. So may God bless every one of you in this room who receive ministry, because that's where it all starts. Your reception of extravagant love. And God bless everyone in this room who give it away. That's what we do. May the Lord bless our ministries. Amen.